Hey guys, what's up? Pixels here, and in today's video, I'm giving you my ultimate guide to Evil Dead 1 Ash and Evil Dead the game. So this is my most played support character. He takes quite a long time to master and get really good with because I believe he has like such like a high skill cap compared to other survivors in the game. But the main things we're going to be looking at in this guide is designing his build, giving you some pre-made selections, what characters he works well with, obviously telling you how to play this guy a little bit, and also the pink fuck upgrades and what weapons to use on this guy. So the first thing that we're going to look at is designing his build. So the main thing that I go for designing his build is putting 4 out of 4 in Shems Plus. It really helps out. This guy's more of like a hybrid warrior support character. So mainly, putting up the Shems Plus, you will take quite a lot of damage sometimes when you are doing a lot of attacking against possessed units primarily. So you will have to pull back a little bit. And so drinking a Shems will pretty much put you up to full health. And not only that, but it does give a little bit more extra percentage to healing your teammates as well. So always go 4 out of 4 in Shems Plus on any support character that you play, especially because supports can be a little bit squishy too. So it does help out having that. And again, the main thing here is Artful Dodger, just 1 point into that. We would put more points into this maybe later on down the line when we do have more points to spend with the Prestige system upgrades. But the main thing that I just go for right now is just the 1 point. You will get 3 dodges with pink fuck upgrades as well. So there's no need to go any higher in this. And the next one that we go for is just 3 points into balance bar damage. He is melee focused character, so I like to buff up his melee as much as possible. I don't go for Last Word. Last Word can work well with this guy, but for me, the main thing that I like to go for is balance bar damage because, if you do decide that you want to try Last Word out, this mainly works well with 3-speed weapons. It won't work that well with 1-speed weapons like an axe or something. A lot of the time, you can tend to get cut out before you do your 4th and final hit of the combo, so I tend to just not bother with this. However, it can work well with 3-speed weapons, bear that in mind, because I have tested it out and it does work relatively well with that, but it's not worth it. For me, it's always about just hitting once, hitting hard, and getting as much healing as possible from that one hit. And the next thing, we're just going to put 1 point at the Wig Splitter. Again, I would max this out if I had extra points from Prestige. However, designing my build at the moment with just 25 skill points, I don't feel it's worth buffing that up at all. The next one is just 1 point into First Aid. It's a great perk, First Aid. It does help out. The reason why I don't put this up on this guy is because I tend to keep my teammates alive really well with this dude, so I don't really need to have First Aid. However, it can be really clutch because it's basically free healing if you do get a revive off and, 35% of health recovered. It will put your teammates mostly into their white bars and almost, about 60% healed or something. So it definitely does help out quite a lot with that. And the next one is Deep Pocket Shems Colas. Of course, who doesn't want to carry more colas being a support character? It's definitely a priority on any support, so be sure that you put that on the build too. And then I like to start with 2 extra Shems with this guy. It's something less to worry about at the start of the game, which means I can rush objectives and collect other loot a lot faster as well. So always spawning with an extra Shems is a priority with this dude. And then because he is a warrior / support hybrid, I do like to put his industrial strength maxed out to 25%. It works out really well in this guy. He can tank a lot of damage whilst also dealing damage to heal himself back up as well. So it does work well with that. And again, with Tougher Than Hell, I like to put Tougher Than Hell on because, again, it's a 10% extra damage reduction. It works out well with this dude. And then the last 4 points, as you could guess, is Devastating Force. Increase in melee weapon damage is a priority with this guy, mainly because of his heavy damage. So the higher damage output you've got, the better healing you're going to give your team. And we'll also get into some weapons that you can use to get the best healing with this dude. But mainly, this is what a build should look like for this guy. There's other stuff that you can look into, like increased range weapon damage and stuff. But, this is primarily when you've got the Prestige leveled up and you've got the extra 5 skill points to use on the guy. So, like I said, you can definitely go for range weapon damage later on down the line with this dude. But the main thing for me is doing heavy damage and giving as much healing as possible from my melee combat. And especially, it helps out the team dealing damage and dealing with possessed units and boss units and stuff. And, it does work out really well like that. So, anyways, the things to avoid on the skill tree, long life batteries, not really worth it. Be No Evil is definitely not worth it on this guy because he has an ability to bring his fear level down in anyways. So, there's not much point in that. Fast Forward can work decently on this guy. He can solo objectives pretty well sometimes. So, he's not a terrible selection for that, but again, this is probably something that you want to look at in more advanced builds once you've got more skill points. And I just totally ignore the amulets on this guy. I pick up 4 amulets. I drop them for my warriors. I don't really use them at all. There's not much point of that. Especially because you want to be focusing on healing and, you know, dropping amulets and stuff. You know, it's not... it can be beneficial, but with this guy, there's other supports built for amulets that just are much better than this guy for that. This guy is primarily for doing health and buffing health. Of course, shields can help out a little bit, but again, it's just not worth it on this guy for me. Okay, so now I'm just going to suggest some pre-made selections and, you know, what characters this guy works well with. So the characters that this guy works well with is Annie, Leader Ashe, Scotty, and a Hunter Ashe. This should be in a pre-made comp. So if you have a team of 4, you know, have someone play Annie or Leader Ashe, have someone play Scotty, have someone play Hunter Ashe, and it'll definitely get the most out of this guy. Primarily, you know, Annie and Leader Ashe work well with this guy because, you know, Annie gives the range buffs for his headshots. And not only that, but she gives the balance bar buff as well. So because this guy's going to be attacking AI units so much, or, you know, possessed units in general, like evil units, when he's doing the heavy hit attacks, then the balance bar is going to stack and it's going to work well with Annie. And also Leader Ashe. Leader Ashe works fantastic with this guy. He gives him an overall 15% buff. If your Leader Ashe is prestige, it'll give him a 20% buff in damage for ranged and melee, and will give him a fear resistance as well. So with the fear resistance and combined with this guy's ability to bring fear down for your team, basically it can also make your team almost unpossessable. So it can work out really well. It's a great combination to have. The reason why I didn't choose Lord Arthur is because Lord Arthur literally just buffs up his, you know, his heavy damage for his healing, and, you know, it doesn't really factor in anything else. So like I said, the main thing here is Leader Ashe probably is the best to work with this guy. And then Scotty, of course, Scotty being, you know, a really heavy hitter. So combined with Evil Dead 1 Ashe, who will also be doing a lot of combat with Scotty, they can work well together too. And then Hunter Ashe for the ranged buffs. You know, if you're hitting the headshots and giving the, you know, the healing and the extra damage with the marked target, then, you know, Hunter Ashe is going to be able to pull away, get a little bit of healing for himself and do extra damage as well. So that's for the pre-made selection. For solo queue, he literally will work well with anyone in solo queue. He's a solid pick for solo queue. When I solo queue and, you know, we need a support, I always choose this guy and I do really well with him. And, you know, I can kind of carry the team a little bit with him as well. So I do have a lot of fun playing this guy. And in my opinion, I think he's the most fun support to play. And like I said, he's definitely the toughest support to play. But once you do get good with this guy, you can almost feel unstoppable and do really, really well for the team. But anyways, let's move on and I'll tell you how to play this guy. Okay, so I'm just going to give you guys a few tips on how to play Evil Dead 1 Ashe in Evil Dead the game. And, you know, just hitting heavies, like I said, is a priority. So I'm always hitting heavy attacks with this guy. With my lumberjack axe, it's always the best way to go with this dude. I don't tend to hit heavy attacks if I'm, you know, looting at the start of the game and I don't have the demon on me and I have no one around me. I won't bother hitting any heavy attacks, mainly because the best thing to do here is just to do finishes. Because if you do hit heavy attacks, of course, depending on the AI unit, you can take a little bit of damage because, you know, it makes you a bit more vulnerable to attacks from the AI. So the main reason I don't do that is just because I want to save a little bit of health. If I am with my teammates, however, I will always just do heavy attacks because, you know, you never really know who, like, what's going to happen. You know, keeping your team's health up as much as possible during even the looting phase can work really well with the heavy attacks. So as long as your team stick with you and, you know, you have other people next to you, then always just do heavy attacks. It works out great. The next one is obviously when to hit his ranged headshots. So when to hit his ranged headshots, for me, is one of the biggest learning curves of playing Evil Dead 1 Ashe. You know, anyone, I suppose, can pick him up and just spam loads of heavy attacks. But the primary thing for me is using the headshots on possessed units and bosses. So being able to headshot and mark target a boss unit, especially when you've got a hunter on your team, can work out really well. Because they will do an extra 20% of damage, and the duration is 5 seconds, so it's pretty good for that. And not only that, but they will get a little bit of healing back to them as, you know, 10% healing restored from whatever damage they do. So, you know, the healing one's not great, but the damage one's definitely really, really good. And not only that, but it does help him out as well. If he's stuck in a 1v1 situation, if you headshot, you know, like a possessed unit running towards you with a revolver or a pistol, and you keep hitting them, you'll keep healing yourself. You'll do extra damage to them as well. And so it does make it quite easy to sometimes 1v1 possessed units with this guy as well. So don't bother going for like ranged headshots on basic AI units. You want to use those like, the crowd of AI to basically heal your team with melees as much as possible. Only focus down the tough enemies like possessed units and bosses with the headshots. I said I've seen a lot of Evil Dead 1 Ashes just running around constantly headshotting things, and it doesn't work out well for the team at all because, like I said, he needs to be there heavy hitting things to give the team as much health as possible. And, he doesn't always just give the team loads of health from melee hits, but there's been certain situations where this guy's healing would carry a lot. Even if there isn't any shemps. I've had moments where I don't have any shemps at the end of the game, and just doing heavy attacks has definitely kept my team alive. But the primary thing is obviously hitting the heavy attacks, and if you feel like your team is getting to about 40% health, 30% health, there's like a few people on orange, that's when you tend to use your colas. And that's what I do. I use my colas then. I don't really just keep everyone topped up when they're in white health. There's no point in that. If I see a teammate nearly going to go down, I will do my best to use a cola for them. Sometimes I will actually let people go down with this guy as well, because obviously he doesn't have a lot of colas to carry like Cheryl, but you kind of just got to learn that for yourself when to let certain people go down. If you see someone face tanking a lot of damage all the time and you feel like you're just wasting your colas on that one person, just let them go down and let the team get the XP at the end of the day, because most of the time they're just going to be dragging your team down by using your resources. So a lot of the time it makes more sense to let someone go down, so that way you can revive them and just get some health that way, and it will heal them a little bit too. Okay, so using his ability, never forget that this guy actually has an ability. I've done it myself. I've played through the entire game and just like, oh shit, I forgot to totally use this guy's ability. It can be kind of looked over a little bit, and people probably think that it's not great, especially because of the radius on it. So I'll tell you how to use his ability effectively as possible. So what I do is when I'm playing, I basically have my eyes glued to my damage dealers' fear bars. So that'd be my warriors or my hunters. I'm always paying attention to their fear bars. If I see them getting a bit too high, I'll stand next to them and trigger this ability. So all you have to do to trigger this ability properly is to stand next to someone and press the active ability. You don't have to keep following them around. You literally just have to stand next to them. And as soon as you press that, even if they run away from it whilst you're doing the animation, they will still get the effect applied to them, and it will reduce their fear, because a lot of people think that you've kind of just got to stick near the Evil Dead 1 Ash to get that. That's not the case. If the Evil Dead 1 Ash triggers the active ability when he's standing next to someone, it will work regardless. So be sure to learn how to use his ability effectively. Like I said, it's more of a feel thing that you get from playing the game with experience rather than something I can teach you. But that is probably like the best tip I can give for that. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you guys what weapons to use on Evil Dead 1 Ash. And of course, you can probably guess I'm going to say the Lumberjack Axe. Lumberjack Axe is a priority on this guy, mainly because it has hyper armor. Other weapons in the game do have a little bit of hyper armor, but not as much as the Lumberjack Axe, which means you will not get interrupted during your heavy attacks most of the time. In between attacks, you can get interrupted a little bit, but if you start the animation, it's very, very, very rare that you'll get knocked out of that. And that's why the Lumberjack Axe works really good with this guy. Hitting heavy attacks with this, it does 100 damage. It does great damage with this weapon, and that'll work well with your healing as well. The sword's a good choice as well. The sword's a decent heavy. The heavy that you've got to kind of avoid, though, is the second one. It doesn't always hit the target that well. But, it is a decent weapon. It's a solid choice to pick up on this guy. I have used it a little bit, but, the Lumberjack Axe is definitely a priority if you want to get a lot of healing. The mace is decent as well. The mace has some hyper armor. It only has a 65 base damage, but for me, if you can sort of get a blue mace pretty easily in the game, even a common one can work out well with this guy. But yeah, the mace works great, mainly because it has decent hyper armor, and it's great for targeting crowds too. It can wipe out crowds quite a lot. And of course, the more hits you're getting on a crowd of AI units, that'll fall back onto your team as more healing done as well. So that works out well. And so this leads me into my next weapon, which is a staff. So the staff has a great area of effect, area of effect damage. There's a lot the staff can do. It has fast, heavy attacks as well. So the staff can work out pretty good on this guy. I definitely don't like to use the spear. I know the spear hits a little bit harder than the staff, but the staff for me has a little bit more hyper armor, and you can't really get interrupted that much with the staff. And like I said, it has a big area effect range. So if you're swinging with a staff, you will take out a lot of AI units. And again, the more hits you're getting, the more healing it's going to do for your team. So it works out great. And then for my final one is the hand axe. So the hand axe works well with this guy again because it is sort of like a hyper armorish weapon where, you know, it's a 3-speed weapon. You can hit hard with it. This will work well with Last Word as well as the staff. So, you know, if you do decide to go for the 3-speed weapon route, which is a staff and a hand axe, this will work well. I'm just going to throw another one in there as well, is the machete. So I have picked up a machete with this guy. It does have like quite a high damage output, and the heavies aren't that bad on it either. So the machete can work pretty decent on this guy. Most of the time though, like I say, if you find a common lumberjack axe, use the common lumberjack axe. Only upgrade to like, you know, another weapon if it's a rarity of like purple or higher. So, you know, if you see like a purple machete on the floor, it could, you know, maybe do a little bit more damage than the lumberjack axe, then go for that. I'm not entirely sure what a purple machete's damage output is, but I'm not sure if it's higher than a common lumberjack axe off the top of my head. But I have picked up a legendary machete on this guy over a common lumberjack axe, and I've done insane healing with that as well. I stay away from 5-speed weapons like the knives and the syringes. They don't work well on this guy anymore. They used to work out great because, you know, whatever hit he did a flat 35 healing. So you could basically just spam that as much as possible when the game first come out. But now 5-speed weapons just don't work well on this guy, unfortunately. So don't bother with those at all. But like I said, don't swap to a higher weapon unless it's at least a purple on this guy, you know. Like a purple sledgehammer will make sense over a common lumberjack axe just because it gives you a higher bit of damage. But, you know, the sledgehammer is not great on this guy. Primarily, the sledgehammer just has poor hit detection. It has weird animations. You can get knocked out with the heavies on that as well. Same with the shovel as well. The shovel sucks on this guy, unfortunately. Even though he's holding a shovel in the menu, it just doesn't work on this dude well at all. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the ranged weapons. So the ranged weapons that I pick up on this guy is revolver, pistol, lever action rifle. Main reason I use these weapons is because it's just easier to hit headshots with, and being able to headshot boss units easier and spam the headshots on the possessed units as well. So, you know, using pistols, lever action rifles, revolver, using the handgun ammo weapons definitely works well on this guy. The weapons that I avoid using is like anything that my hunter's using. So mostly hunters will use long gun ammo weapons. So if I see my hunter using a long gun ammo weapon, I'll always just stick to a pistol and carry the special weapon ammo as well as the long gun ammo, so I can drop for them later on down the line. So that way, you know, you're being as efficient as possible. However, if I'm playing solo queue, I will tend to pick up like a boomstick or something for myself, because the weird thing is with this guy, if you hit a pellet with the boomstick, all the other pellets will class as another hit, so that way it will put your healing for yourself as well, and it'll do increased damage per pellet as well. So it's hard to explain that one, but in solo queue, you know, using a shotgun or a boomstick can work well with this guy. But, you know, if you're playing with a team, then sticking with a revolver, pistol, lever action rifle is always the safe bet with this guy. I found the most use out of a revolver, mainly because the revolver has like a high damage output with just one bullet compared to the other two, so I always stick with the revolver. But, you know, you can pick up like a legendary lever action rifle or something with this guy. You know, you're not really going to be pissing your team off if you pick up a legendary weapon like that on this guy. Just, you know, obviously save the legendary long gun ammos for your hunters. As primarily, if they're a good hunter player, they will be using a long gun ammo weapon or a special weapon ammo weapon. So don't worry about picking up a handgun ammo legendary or anything like that on this guy, because it will help him out a little bit too, and it will help your team out. Okay, so before we move on to the pink fuck upgrade section of the guide, I just want to mention a few tips on how to play against Necromancer with this dude, because this guy doesn't really work that well against Necromancer, but there is ways you can combat that. So the main thing that I do is kick basic units with this guy. The reason why I do that is that you actually have a higher chance to hit their health bar rather than their shield. So, you know, the main thing with this guy is doing damage to the unit to get the healing back. Unfortunately, with the Necromancer shields, that's not possible, because you have to hit them like 2 times, maybe even 3 times before you can even start damaging their health, because, you know, these AI units are really like derpy in the game at the moment. They're supposed to drop their shields once they lose their balance bar, but they don't. Their shields float and they can take like extra hits, which is just stupid. So the main thing that I do is I kick them and I'll hit them with the axe and the top of the head. And, most of the time that helps me to be able to just, get earlier hits on their health bar. So that's a tip that I will give if you're playing against Necromancer with this guy. And also, if you're fighting an Evil Ash, always headshot him. Don't really go for melee combat. What I will suggest is go for heavy melee combat. If you notice you get the red heal block icon underneath your health bar, do not continue to melee hit this guy, mainly because you will not get any healing back because he will block your heals. So if you're playing against Evil Ash, just be wary of that. Mainly when I'm playing against an Evil Ash, I will headshot him and just keep headshotting him until he'll die, as long as my team keep attacking him too. And so, yeah, you just got to be wary of that when you're playing against an Evil Ash, that he does have a heal block if he does hit a survivor for a short period of time. So, again, it's just something you've got to learn for yourself. I can't really explain it in more detail than that. So be wary to look out for that. But yeah, most of the other demons in the game he works well against. Sometimes he doesn't work that well against Plaguebringer, because Plaguebringer can have little bits of damage reduction applied to them with the blighted effect and stuff. But he's still pretty decent against Plaguebringer. Elagos, Warlord, he works really well against those as well. But yeah, Necromancer and Plaguebringer, he does struggle a little bit with. But, you're not going to struggle too much once you get used to playing this guy. So now let's move on and telling you guys how to spend the pink fuck on this dude. Okay, to spend the pink fuck on Evil Dead 1 Ash, I've given you two options here. So the pre-made selection here is stamina. So always max out your stamina first, no matter who you're playing. That way you get the maximum dodge as possible combined with Awful Dodger. And also it helps you sprint around a little bit earlier at the start of the game to get some loot. Next one is melee. Maxing out this dude's melee. You only get an extra 5% speed on your attacks, but it does help out a little bit. And not only that, but you do get a little bit of health, a little bit of melee buff as well. So be sure to do that, because obviously the higher melee with this dude, the better that he performs. So be sure to go for that in the second. And then the third is the range. So the range mainly is because of the little bit faster reload speed. Obviously, just hitting a bit harder with the ranged weapons helps out. And then I go fear. Fear mainly because I don't want to be possessed so easily. Helping with fear resistance combined with my ability works out really well and will work out for your team. And for the last one, I choose health. Just buffing this guy's health up definitely helps out. So making him more of a tank too. But yeah, for a pre-made, that's the selection that I go in. For solo queue, however, stamina is the first one again. Melee for the second one. Then I go fear for the third one. And the main reason that is because if I'm soloing and I'm by myself, I don't want to be easily possessed, especially combined with his ability. Having fear resistance and his ability will make me a lot harder to possess. And it gives me the option to actually kind of 1v1 objectives too if I don't have any teammates around me. So I can carry the objective by myself. The next one is health, and finally range. So yeah, those are the options for spending the pink fuck on Evil Dead 1 Ash. Of course, there is other routes you can go. Obviously, it depends on your build a lot of the time. If you are speccing into shield, maybe you want to do shield first. But for me, those are the routes that I like to go for spending the pink fuck on this guy. And like I said, I tend to just avoid shield because it's always better to drop shields for your warriors on your team. Honestly, having the warriors being able to just spend one amulet to get 2 shield bar lengths, because your warriors are the primary, damage takers on the game. Having them being able to just soak up damage through their shields rather than their health all the time greatly helps out. So obviously giving them amulets as much as possible is the most beneficial method here, playing a support character, especially Evil Dead 1 Ash. So anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it there for my ultimate guide to Evil Dead 1 Ash and Evil Dead the game. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. If you have any questions about the character, leave me a comment down below. If anyone has any more tips on how to play the character, be sure to leave the comment as well. Hopefully we can help out newer players and stuff to get better at this character. Like I said, for me, he's like the highest skill capped character in the game. He takes a long time to get good with, but once you get good with him, he can obviously, I feel like he can be like the best survivor in the game almost. Even though he has like 2 kind of useless abilities, like, the mark target ones I'm not a huge fan of, but his other 2 ones are pretty good. So, he's not the best character in the game, but he does have a high skill cap. So, if you do have a cracked Evil Dead 1 Ash on your team, it can be really game changing and really helpful, especially at the book phase, because that where the other supports kind of fail at the book phase, this guy makes up for, because you know, you want to get as much damage on the book phase as possible when people, because demons these days are targeting the book so often, they'll crowd the book around, so obviously having as much damage as possible around there definitely helps out, whereas the other supports kind of don't help out as much with that because, you know, they can easily get targeted and die pretty quickly, whereas this guy can help sustain health as much as possible. With his heavy attacks and also dealing damage and balance bar damage in the process of that. So anyways, guys, like I said, this has been my ultimate guide. Leave me a comment, leave me a like, hit that sub button if you're new to the channel for more guide videos and more Evil Dead content. And I have been Pixels, you my awesome viewers, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.